So AMD Advanced Micro Devices, also known as Advanced Money Destroyer, is continuing to fall. Of course, I've done a video on AMD before and it wasn't a positive outlook, and a lot of people told me I was missing the bigger picture. However, I would just like to say I'm not missing the bigger picture. I think long term the stock is going to do absolutely fine, but right now it's definitely not a stock to be buying into. And if you are buying into it, even at this point, you are quite literally exit liquidity. So when I get back to the office, I'm going to do another review on AMD. I'm going to tell you exactly why I think this is a falling knife, and if you're catching it, you're going to lose your fingers and your money. So yeah, I'll see you back in the office. Just very quickly, I'd like to welcome my viewers to sunny England, because I only think about 5% of my viewers are English. So yeah, it's true, I haven't seen the sun in about a month, but we do have cute ducks and a fairly clean pond. Actually, it's quite impressive. So welcome back to the setup. Quickly on a day chart here, we can see that on the MACD trendline indicator, we can see that we are now just in a long falling position ever since around about October. I made my video around about the start of December, I want to say, and since then it has just continued to decline. We are seeing this decline just continue. Please, TradingView, stop annoying me with this. I do not have an ad blocker on. It's just trying to get me to buy TradingView, which I don't see the point in doing. But moving on, again, we're looking to see this decline just continue. If we look on a moving average here, we can see that we are below all of the moving averages. So when we look on Yahoo Finance, what can we see? Well, we have an earnings per share at 0.98 at 107 and a PE ratio trading currently at 109 times earnings. So for me at that price, it is just not worth getting into this stock, but I'm going to get into why now. I do think long term AMD is going to be a powerhouse for AI, GPUs, CPUs, data centers, and whatever they are in. But right now, with the competition of Nvidia and Nvidia being miles ahead of the game, there's just no way that AMD can compete. All that AMD is at the moment is it is a scapegoat for big companies such as Google, Microsoft, the ones that are buying a load of AMD GPUs at the moment. It's a scapegoat for them to essentially say, listen, we've got this deal with AMD on the side. They're offering us a much better price, so I want a better price from you, Nvidia. It just opens up room for negotiation for these companies, essentially. Of course, AMD is much bigger than that, but at the moment, that is the primary use for AMD, as their technology just isn't there. Long term, don't get me wrong, AMD is a brilliant company and will continue to beat expectations and do really, really well. I'm not saying that you're going to lose your money instantly when you put your money into AMD. It's not going to go broke or anything. It is a really, really good company. It's just that right now it doesn't look to be too favourable when compared to its peers. For the first quarter of 2025, AMD expects a revenue of approximately 7.1 billion plus or minus 300 million at the midpoint of the revenue range. This represents a year-over-year growth of approximately 30%. This being a sequential decline of approximately 7%. So it is clear that business is potentially slowing down for AMD. How much so? Well, 7% over the last year, but it could definitely just be a Q1 sort of thing. But of course, the Q4 outlook when they released their Q3 statement of 2024 was also not particularly great. So now we're going to look over my system in this technical analysis to help us see whether or not this is actually a solid buy at the moment, or if AMD is definitely a stock to be selling. So let's start this off with the liquidity ratios. So looking here on the left, we can see a liquidity ratio consistently around the 2 mark. This is a really positive thing for AMD, as it means they have at least $2 of liquid cash to pay back their total debt per quarter, which is of course very positive. And now we are looking at the retention rate, where we can see in the previous quarter just gone, Q4 of 2024, we can see the retention rate was only at 6.3%. This is obviously massively off compared to their rivals such as Nvidia, of course. And we can see that it does range from around 10% all the way down to 2%. I think it is worth just quickly stating I have nothing to gain from being negative on AMD. I haven't got a short position opened on any stock, let alone AMD. This is just my opinion at the moment, and if you don't like it, then I'm sorry. But Now we are going to look at the free cash flow. This is looking relatively good for AMD, as we can see this increase quarter over quarter, which is a very good sign. And now looking at a 365-day exponential chart on volume and price, we can see the correlation between the price and volume is relatively strong, which is well, I would say good thing, but with the price going down, it's not a good thing. If it was going up, it would be a good thing, but it's going down. We can see it's just consistently going down for the last 365 days. And if we now look to a 91-day, it's a similar story, but we are seeing a bit of resistance in the volume. So that could be signaling maybe the end of this downturn for AMD, but I'm not entirely sure about that. That's just something that time will have to show. Quickly looking here on the figures, we've got a P ratio of 107, of course, a 52-week high of 227, a low of 106, this being a difference of 120, with the beta rate being at 1.72. That is currently obviously a bad thing for AMD with the price going down consistently. So this is the bit that you've all been skipping to. I see you moving on the timeline down to intrinsic value. Don't think that you've gone unnoticed. So this is, of course, the intrinsic value of AMD. On the left here, we've got the bullish formula, which states that the current intrinsic value is set at 66.65, with the current price being set at 107 and the margin of safety at 25%. We get an acceptable buy price at $49, obviously putting this in at a sell. And when we move over to the right here on the bearish formula, if you thought that was bad enough, it's just going to get worse here. This, of course, calculates intrinsic value off of a 1-year growth rate. But moving back onto the right bearish formula, we can see the intrinsic value is $35 with an acceptable buy price of 26. So currently it looks that this stock is massively overvalued. And to back that up, when we go in between the two of these, the intrinsic value is set at 51 with the acceptable buy price at $38. So I can't exactly say that it looks like this stock is going to be fairly valued at any point in the near future. I think that we might actually see this stock just fall all the way down, potentially to around the $50 mark. I don't think it will go that far. We might see it end up around the $70 mark, but I don't think we're going to see it reach all the way down to the intrinsic value. To further back this up, we have Peter Lynch's valuation here, which of course is quite a bearish formula and essentially gives us a result of 0.31, which signals that this stock is heavily overvalued currently. If you do hold AMD stock and you're already typing your comment on how I'm not considering this and that and this and that, this is going off of a lot of analysts' expectations. This isn't just what I've made up. These numbers are all from professional analysts, and I have just done the maths here to say this is what the output is, and it's not looking particularly good. So if you want something positive to take away, if you hold AMD stock, you might see your money return to you eventually. In fact, it's not a might, you definitely will. This is obviously still a very good company. I'm not saying it's not. If you are getting the wrong impression of this, I'm not an AMD hater. I just don't appreciate people saying you should be buying into AMD as it's a falling stock. That's just not a good idea. But if we look here on the discounted free cash flow analysis, we can see that the average growth being 16%, of course, being brought down by 22 and 23, and the current growth rate being set at 33 with the surprise rate, of course. We can see that we get a discounted free cash flow price set at $294. So, of course, this is obviously taking into account 9 years worth of growth, but you might be able to see your money return to you within 1 or 2. I do think this stock is always going to do well, just not right now. We're definitely in a downturn. I think that we are currently around this part of AMD right now where we're in a bit of panic and a bit of anger, but it's hard to say. But this cycle will just continue to happen within AMD. I think in the next 1 to 2 years we're going to see a lot of buying pressure in AMD, just not right now, as it is, of course, a falling knife. And if you are getting in, like I said earlier, you are just exit liquidity. I think if you got into AMD at a suitable time, then definitely continue to hold. But if you're thinking of buying in, I can't recommend buying into AMD. It's just a bad idea. I think if you're trying to buy the bottom, I wouldn't recommend it. Just trying to do that is basically gambling. And if you are trying to do that, the bottom is probably a couple of months, if not nearly a year away. But they are my opinions. I don't want to just give you my thoughts, as I don't want to be too biased. These are the analyst expectations. So with AMD, they are currently actually pricing this in at a buy, which in my mind is a bit ridiculous. I'm putting this at a hold if you have this stock. I'm not going to put it at a sell purely because long-term growth is going to be good for AMD. Just in the next few months to year, I don't see there being enough intrinsic growth within AMD. But in the next 12 months, we are seeing a price target of a high of 225 and a low of 90. So moving back to TradingView, if you were looking to buy into AMD, what should you be looking for? Well, for a start, you would want to see this 50-day moving average fall below where the current price is. When that will be, I'm not entirely sure. Again, it could be within the next 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 months. Maybe even the next year, who knows, with AMD, as like I said, intrinsically this stock does seem to be somewhat overvalued now. So if you are, of course, looking to buy into AMD, I wouldn't be buying into it now at all, despite the analysts saying buy. Long term, yes, you'll probably see return naturally anyway. Again, it's kind of difficult with these types of stocks as they can often be driven by hype. For example, the PE ratio being currently over 100. But for me right now, this is not a stock to be buying into. It's a hold on the margin of being a sell, but long term, I think you will see returns if you look at the bigger picture of this stock. So I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it somewhat useful. If you have, please do hit the like and subscribe button down below. It would be greatly appreciated. If you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments why. I mean, if you don't agree with me, I would just like to quickly reiterate, these are just the numbers in which I've presented to you intrinsically. It's nothing of my own personal opinion really, apart from the fact that AMD is just a bargaining tool for big companies against Nvidia, but that's just my personal opinion. Of course, they are an amazing company and will continue to see growth in the future, but for right now, it's not a stock in which I want to be buying into. That doesn't mean to say it's not an amazing company. So with that being said, I will see you for the next video.